Hello, listeners. This episode, we're going to do things a little bit differently because I, Kristin, am solo. I'm doing it on my own. Why? Because I thought we messed up our schedules, but we didn't. And I wrote an episode and I'm stubborn and I wanted to record it. So here we are on my own, on my lonesome. I hope you enjoy the episode, even though we don't have Grace. And then don't worry. Because next week she's coming back. So here we go. I hope you enjoy. Bye.
They said that we'd grow out of it. Well, the joke's on them, that's just our brains. We're eccentric, loud, and stubborn. And most of our clothing is covered in stains. It's not a deficit of attention. There's just too much to think about. So if executive dysfunction becomes a little too much, if you forgot why you came in this room, or you're hypersensitive to touch, then put on your seamless socks and come join our little flock. Bitches stimming together, we're weirds of a feather. Weirds of a feather.
Hello. If you're wondering, I think I just hear one voice today. You would be correct. That's because it's just me, Kristin. No Grace today. And no, we didn't break up. We didn't have a friend fight. There's no drama. We're just terrible at keeping schedules. At least I thought we were. Apparently we're not. As you may know from me not so subtly hinting and alluding to it in previous episodes multiple times, I started a new job. And with new jobs comes new schedules. Also, Grace went on vacation, and between those two things and the holidays, I thought we didn't have enough episodes, and I didn't want to leave you guys episode lists for a week. And then I was like, I'm going to be the hero and record by myself. Turns out we did have an episode, but I already wrote this episode, so I'm still taking it as a win. We're recording. We're doing this alone, but not really because you guys are here, and I'm excited. I'm recording this January 16th is when I'm recording it, and I think it should come out today or tomorrow. And we're about to dive into this multi-part series on ADHD and addiction. Heavy stuff. But before we go into such a buzzkill of a topic, I thought, why not chat about something inspiring, something exciting, some new research going on? Science is wonderful that it's always moving us forward and inspiring us to be better. And so I just thought, wouldn't that be nice to kind of highlight some studies? And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to just kind of cruise through it. But first, let's do a little accomplishment. Little accomplishments, but big in our hearts. Yeah. So today, I'm having a little bit of what I would call a low dope day. It's my day off. It's been a week, but I did manage to clean all of the eggs our chickens have laid. We've had this pile of eggs that we need to wash so we can put them in the fridge. Our chickens are laying more than I ever thought they would in January. And they're happy little girls. And I love them more than I ever thought I would. They just keep laying eggs. Do we eat a lot of eggs? No. So we have a lot of eggs and I don't know what to do with them. And they were just kind of in a bucket on the counter waiting to be washed. So I did that today and I'm pretty proud of it because I've done nothing else today. That's okay. It's okay to have rest days. It's okay to have low dope days. Sometimes I feel really guilty for not being as productive as I feel like I should. I tend to set lots of unreasonable expectations of myself. I'm sure I'm not alone in that. Instead of, if I can just do one thing, then I'll be happy. And I did. So here we are with nice, clean eggs. What I'm going to do with those eggs, I don't know. I'll figure it out eventually. I don't really like omelets and I don't really bake. So I don't know. I don't know what to do with eggs. I gave a couple away last week. But now I have 16 more. So I gotta figure out some recipes. Maybe a meatloaf. Christopher makes a really good meatloaf. If you have an egg recipe that you love, let me know. Where's the feather at gmail.com. I would love a good recipe that's easy and not difficult because I'm not good in the kitchen. But let's move on to our meat. It is the meat. Meat. It's a lot harder to do when you're by yourself. I feel like Grace and I really feed off of each other, like in the worst way possible, which is why we started this podcast. And now that I'm like by my lonesome, it's hard to be as much of a doofus as I usually am with Grace. But that's okay. We'll move on. So this meaty episode is I just want to review some major research, not major, some regular size research involving ADHD that was published recently within the last year. Some of these articles are a little heavy on the science. I'm not the best at reading journal articles. I am striving to be better, but I just want to kind of recap. I think if we can just recap like what was done and why it's important, that's really like the big points, right? So here we go. Let's dive in. A study in Sweden that was published in JAMA, which is the Journal of American Medical Association, kind of a big deal, of 2024, followed 148,578 people with ADHD and found that initiating medication caused a 2-year lower mortality risk. Subjects were between the ages of 6 and 64 and were followed from the years 2007 to 2018. 56% were medicated with a stimulant, so things like Vyvanse, Adderall, Ritalin, atomoxetine, which is a non-stimulant, or guanfacine, which is another non-stimulant. And this happened, they were initiated on this medication within the first 3 months of their diagnosis. 56% were, 43% were not. Per this study, initiation of ADHD medication within the first 3 months of diagnosis was associated with a lower all-cause mortality rate and an all unnatural cause mortality rate. What does that mean? Well, it means that those medicated with ADHD within 3 months of their diagnosis overall died less and died from unnatural causes less. Unnatural causes may be like fires, car accidents, poisonings, falling off a ladder, things that are not like age or disease related. The authors hypothesize that people with ADHD who are medicated are less impulsive and may be less likely to die in some sort of accident, which would reflect on their data. They also reference that other research looks at those medicated for their ADHD are less likely to have mood disorders, so anxiety, depression, trauma, CPTSD, all these things. They also referenced other research that looks at those medicated for their ADHD are less likely to have mood disorders, so anxiety or depression, and are less likely to be involved in crimes. And then lastly, this particular study showed that there was no statistical significance on whether those medicated with ADHD die by suicide less than those unmedicated, but they suggest that further studies need to be done on this issue. And I think this was an important study. It's important to highlight because there's still this big stigma around ADHD and whether it's a real condition, as well as the stigma around taking medication and whether that's actually beneficial for people with ADHD or whether they're just taking it to get better grades. I think even though research with ADHD has come a long way, we still are fighting this huge stigma and, treated like criminals sometimes trying to just get their medication so that they can function as a regular human. But this study shows with statistical significance that ADHD medication reduces the chance of death, which that's important. It's important to be alive. And so, and it was in JAMA, which is also another big deal. So I hope that research like this can kind of reduce these stigmas. I think that this was a great study. The sample size alone, 148,000 people, is huge. I think it's one thing to take into consideration for us Americans is that this study occurred in Sweden, which has public health care and probably a lot easier access to care. So this 3 months within diagnosis, initiating medications, I think in some situations that just isn't possible for we Americans with our nice private healthcare insurance. That's like a real pain in the butt. And we could talk all day about different healthcare things, but I won't bore you to death. But yeah, I thought this was a really great article. I'm glad it was in JAMA. And I think when you're looking at all-cause mortalities, that's a really big thing in medicine. Like if someone came out with a heart failure medication that just reduced the chance of death in 2 years with statistical significance with people with heart failure, everybody would be on that heart failure medication. Like we would have commercials about it. It would be huge, but not so much with ADHD. And that's because of stigma. So I think, showing that with statistical significance that medicating the ADHDer with the appropriate medications reduces death, I think that's huge. And I think that's great. And I hope that this team continues to do research. And let's move on to our next article. Another study in Sweden, I don't think it's the same group, but maybe I'll have to look again, published in the Journal of Child Psychology and Psychiatry in June of 2024, looked at males and females with ADHD and found that overall women were diagnosed later on in life more likely to have comorbid mood disorders, so anxiety, depression, and were more likely to be on non-stimulant pharmacological therapy, including anticonvulsants, neuroleptics, sedatives, hypnotics, as well as psychoanalytics. Yikes. This article does put a disclaimer that they looked at males who were assigned males at birth and females who were assigned female at birth. And when they say males and females, that's what they are referring to. They do say that just for their data, that's why they did that. But they do recognize that trans people are real people. And I thought that was lovely. But let's talk more about what they found. They also found that women were requiring more inpatient and outpatient care. They hypothesized that since ADHD women are often presenting as inattentive types rather than hyperactive, they are less disruptive to society and more often diagnosed later on in life. This late life diagnosis may lead to the development of other psychiatric conditions. Trauma. They also discussed that more research needs to be done on a woman's hormonal cycle and the possible effects it may have on ADHD. I would love to do a deep dive into this. At one point in my life, I thought I was going to go into the gynecology field, and then I quickly learned that not for me, but that's okay. I love the hormonal cycle and learning about it, and I would love to know in research whether that has an effect on the ADHDer. Let me know if you're interested in this. I would love an email, or you can on the socials. Just let us know if this is something. If you're like absolutely not. Also, let me know if you're like deeply opposed to this. I don't know why you would be, but who knows? Let's move on. This article, I think we just like touched like the very tip of the iceberg in information. It had so much information. I thought they did a really good job of like collecting data. And like I said earlier, I only summarized just the basic bits. Maybe at some point I'll go back and really deep dive into it. I think this article did a great job of showing discrepancies in care between men and women with ADHD and how this can have not only long-term consequences on women, but affect the utilization of the healthcare system as a whole. Medicine is unfortunately full of biases. It's full of sexism and racism. And it's nice for research to highlight this because unfortunately, if it's like not in a journal, then it's not real. No, that's not true. But if you put it in a journal, I think it makes it more real and sheds more light on the issues. And I thought this was a really great study and very interesting too. All our studies we're talking about today are going to be linked in the references and show notes if I can figure out how to do that. Christopher will help me. Someone will help me, hopefully. Let's move on. So our last journal review that we're going to discuss today came out of China. It was published in the Journal of Affective Disorders this January, so like a week ago. The study looks at something I've never heard of, which is called brain entropy. I had to do a little digging on this, and don't worry, in addition to the 3 research articles we're discussing, I have linked an article that discusses the use of monitoring brain entropy, which is also called BEN, B-E-N. What the N stands for, I'm not quite sure, and I couldn't find that, but here we go. We'll just roll with it. And another study comparing brain entropy and intelligence. Basically, what I found is that brain entropy measures the amount of neural connectivity and configurations one has. And as of now, the science is showing that the more brain entropy you have, so the more connectivity and connections, the more intelligent you may be. But it's like much more complex than that. I feel like that really dumbs down this whole situation, but just bear with me. Because BEN, or brain entropy, can also be used to measure brain activity and adaptability in the setting of a changing environment. And this is called BEN dynamics. Studies have shown that different disease states have predictable BEN dynamics. So this particular study in China set out to study brain entropy and see if they could find a predictable brain entropy or BEN markers in ADHD. And luckily they did. So this study got 98 children diagnosed with ADHD and 111 neurotypical children. They scanned their brains with an MRI and they found 3 brain entropy dynamic types that correlated with ADHD, and as well as symptom severity. So what that would mean is if my limited understanding of brain entropy is if you have more severe symptoms, your brain will go through these dynamic states either more or less or more strongly. If this is confusing, it's probably because I'm doing a very poor job of explaining this, which is an accurate reflection on my knowledge on the subject. But let's talk about the overall lessons we can get from this article. I think the overall takeaway we can get from this article is that research is being done in order to hone in on a way to objectively diagnose ADHD. Grace and I often talk about how ADHD is hard to diagnose because not only does it depend on the patient and how they present their case to the practitioner, we would call these subjective findings, but it also depends on the practitioner and whether they're experienced with diagnosing ADHD, whether they know about hyperactive versus inattentive, and whether they have any unintentional or maybe intentional biases. Unlike blood pressure or high cholesterol, those you can get a number and you're like, yep, there you are. Your numbers are high or your numbers are low. You have high blood pressure. You have cholesterol. Right now, there's no way to objectively diagnose most psychological disorders. But what if there was? What if you went to your primary care and you're like, hey, I'm having all these symptoms. They order an MRI and boop, boop, boop. 2 weeks later, you've got a definitive diagnosis of ADHD or bipolar or depression. Wouldn't that be great? I think right now that's science fiction. But, maybe in the future with studies like this, it won't be. I think we're always learning more and we're always researching things, but it's crazy to me that maybe one day we could have some sort of objective finding of ADHD. And also maybe this will lead to different medications or, it's just, who knows what this will lead to. But I do think it's nice that they are trying to open the doors for doing some sort of understanding how the brain works with ADHD and maybe leading to some sort of objective diagnosis. But here, this is just me pondering, hoping and wishing, and maybe we'll never see this in our lifetime, but maybe we will. Who knows? Also, it's only 98 children, so let's take everything with a grain of salt. Let's not all go out and get MRIs. More stuff needs to be done on that. And that's all the research I have for you guys. I really hope you like this episode. I'm actually thinking of doing a few ADHD Journal Club episodes similar on our Patreon. This would be where I pick an article, or maybe you send me an article. Who knows? And we'll do a deep dive and we'll discuss it and read it and go through it. It'll all be ADHD, autism related. If you're interested in this, let me know. I would love to hear your input. I do want to talk about a couple things before we really squawk out of here. One, to everybody who's affected by the California wildfires, my heart goes out to you. I really hope that you are safe. I hope that you are well. I hope that your family members are well. I know we have some listeners in California, and Christopher has some family members in California, and what I'm seeing on the news is horrific. And I really I hope that you guys are all well and get to safety. For everybody who is fighting those fires, I can't thank you enough for, sacrificing your safety to do what you do on a daily basis. That we even have people from Mexico and Canada and South Africa coming over to help. And I cry every time I think about it. It's incredible, the assistance we're getting from other countries to fight these horrific, devastating fires. And I really hope that you all are well. And I hope that you stay safe. And one more thing. This is another thing. I want to give like a not so shameless plug and say, if you like this podcast, please, please, please support us by giving us, you can do it in a numerous amount of ways. You can give us a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify podcast platforms. That really does help us and it kind of bumps us up. You can leave us a review, which is also very helpful. You can interact with us on all of our socials. We're on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok for now, but there's about to be a ban going through. I don't know where we're gonna go after that. It's the TikTok ban, and then people are. It's crazy that what's happening right now, and everybody's kind of jumping ship on Meta, which is probably the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. I'm loving this whole thing right now. So where we're gonna go, I don't know. It seems like most people are going to Red Note, which I fully support. And so maybe we'll be there too. Maybe it won't get banned. I don't know. Anyway, we're going to go somewhere. You'll find us, but we'll be at Weirds of a Feather on everything. And you can always email us too. So we're at weirdsofafeather@gmail.com. Are we the best at checking emails? No, but we will get back to you. I promise you. It just may take a bit. If you're feeling extra generous, you can go on ko-fi.com/weirds-of-a-feather. You can buy us a theoretical coffee. And lastly, you can join our Patreon to get extra content. We're a small 3-man team, and we all have full-time jobs, and this is truly a labor of love for us. And everything we make goes directly back into the podcast. Most recently, we're trying to save up for a laptop built for sound editing for Christopher. Unfortunately, all the editing software, all like the Adobe and Crisp and whatever technology he's installed on his personal computer is dragging his computer down like a lot. Apparently, I don't know how this works, but he just has to like restart his computer several times just to edit a single episode. So it really turns it, every episode is like such a feat to get out onto our platforms right now. Hopefully this episode gets out there, but that's what we're saving up for. And that's, eventually once we get that laptop, we'll be able to like post more content because Christopher won't take, 8 years just to get one episode up onto like Apple Podcasts. So I hope this gets posted because that will be really sad if we can't even edit this one post. But hopefully his computer doesn't like start smoking and we can get it fired up. But that's what we're doing. And anything, helps us. And we do really appreciate everything you guys, commenting on the polls and interacting on Facebook and all these things. We really, really appreciate it because we really love doing this. But anyway, that's all I've got. I really hope you enjoyed this like impromptu solo episode. I think this has been my only solo episode I've ever done. It was a little scary. I hope you liked it. I hope it's not a disaster. And don't worry because next week Grace will be back and everything will be normal and it will be fine. Okay? Bye. Ah! Ah! Okay, bye.